Now, after hearing that, you may be saying, you guys must be making this up. I mean, isn't Halloween nothing more than an innocent holiday with some fun-filled practices? Who else agrees with you that Halloween stemmed from such terrible pagan practices? Well, if you've got an Encyclopedia Britannica in your home, turn to the article on Halloween in it, and you'll read this information, quote, in ancient Britain and Ireland, the Celtic festival of Samhain was observed on October 31st, at the end of the summer. Now, you remember that Samhain was the name of the chief druidic god, the name they gave to him showing that he was the Lord of the Dead or the Lord of Death. The Encyclopedia Britannica continues, the souls of the dead were supposed to revisit their homes on this day, and the autumnal festival acquired sinister significance, with ghosts, witches, goblins, black cats, fairies, and demons of all kinds said to be roaming about. It was the time to placate the supernatural powers controlling the processes of nature. In addition, Halloween was thought to be the most favorable time for divinations concerning marriage, luck, health, and death. It was the only day on which the help of the devil was invoked for such purposes. End quote. Now, in the weeks to come, we're going to look at why ghosts and witches, black cats, Ouija boards, and various other forms of divination all are associated with Halloween. And as you will learn as we go along, these practices all go back to the occult and spiritistic pagan religious practices of the past. In fact, I'd like you to listen as Dr. Weldon explains why Halloween night was considered in ancient history to be the very best day in the entire year for contacting the spirit world.
In fact, Halloween back then was thought to be the very best time for contacting the spirit world because the veil that separated the material and spiritual worlds was thinnest at that time, and this in fact is something that is believed in witchcraft today, and that is why they celebrate October 31st as one of their most special days.
Now in a moment we're going to take a break, and when we return we're going to look at the specific customs and practices of Halloween that are related to the ancient pagan religious practices of the past. And the reason this is so important is because on Halloween night, our children are imitating and emulating some of the very practices that those in ancient pagan religions performed. So please stick with me. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Let's get down to brass tacks. What specific customs and practices of Halloween are our children involved in today that are directly related back to the ancient pagan religious practices of the Celts? Dr. John Weldon tells us.
What specific customs of Halloween today are related to the ancient practices of the Celts? Well, almost all of them. For example, we have the idea of dressing in costumes. The ancient Celts believed that the spirits were released on this day, and because there were both good and evil spirits released, they would set out food for the good spirits, but they attempted to hide from the evil spirits because they feared them. So some people would put on masks and costumes in order to hide from the evil spirits. Trick-or-treating is related to the ancient Celtic practice. If food was not placed out for the spirits could get angry. The Celts believed it was important to appease the spirits in order to keep them happy. And so by placing food in their homes, they were either welcoming the spirits, the good spirits, or they were attempting to keep the evil spirits appeased.
Now this next part I don't want you to miss. Why is it that our children go down the streets wearing costumes, collecting food and candy, and yelling out the phrase, trick or treat, when they come to the door of somebody's house? Did you know it's because these customs come right out of the pagan religious beliefs and practices of yesteryear? Well, it's true, and you can prove this by looking at Volume 1 of Man, Myth, and Magic, page 67, where we're told, All Hallows Eve, or Halloween, as the beginning of winter and the dying time of the old year, was a night when the dead supposedly stalked the countryside. Offerings of food and drink were put out for the ghosts. And further in Volume 4 of Man, Myth, and Magic, we're told, because the druids believed that during Samhain, or Halloween, the dead would play tricks on mankind and would cause panic and destruction, they, the spirits, had to be appeased. And part of this appeasement process involved the giving of food to the spirits as they visited the homes." End quote. This formed the foundation of the modern practice of trick-or-treat. Now, what other specific customs of Halloween today are related back to the ancient pagan religious practices of the past? I'd like you to listen.
Another Halloween practice that goes back to the ancient Celtic religion is that of displaying fruits and nuts. And this, of course, has a dual aspect, one to keep the spirits that were released on that day happy by giving them an offering of food, and another because the Celts believed that certain nuts, for example, were sacred. They even thought that the acorn was a god.
Next, we're going to examine the question of Halloween and whether or not Christians should participate in it from a different angle. Mainly, can it be shown that the activities of Halloween are in any way connected to the world of the occult? Well, I asked this question of Dr. John Weldon, and here's what he said.
To the question, are the activities of Halloween in any way connected to the world of the occult? Let me assure you that they definitely are. Several days before Halloween, we find our children's classrooms decorated with ghosts and witches and black cats. The kids are all out buying costumes related to the occult. What do you think these symbols mean? Let me again assure you that these symbols and many of the practices associated with Halloween are clearly related to the world of the occult.
Now, maybe you're wondering, how do you guys define the word occult? Well, I'm glad you asked, and here's the answer.
Okay, what is the definition of the word occult? The occult actually means something hidden, and it's used in the sense of establishing contact with supernatural forces in order to get power and knowledge from them.
Now, if that's the definition of the word occult, how is Halloween connected to the occult? Listen carefully.
How are Halloween and the occult connected? Well, they're connected both historically and today. Historically, we find that many of the practices of the occult, such as seeking contact with the spirit world, various forms of divination, were practiced by the ancient Celtic peoples who came from Asia and settled in the British Isles and northern France. We see that today many of the practices of Halloween are also involved in the occult. It's the special day of witches, where they believe that the line connecting the material and spiritual worlds is thinnest, and it's one of the best times for establishing contact with the spirits.